Hi, everybody. Well, what an amazing, extraordinary evening of royal news. We are watching the end of Prince Andrew in real time. He's issued a statement this evening saying that he's renouncing his titles. This has been done in consultation with the King, and it's a pretty sensational moment. I'm here with Tim Tiemann to talk about it all. As any of you who were here yesterday know, I've been at a party this evening, but don't worry, I'm not drunk.
Very much not drunk. I mean, right? So, um, Tom, obviously the news broke at 7 p.m. British time. It was embargoed very strictly for 7 p.m. British time. So I heard about it as any old emigre will tell you on BBC Radio 4 at their 7 o'clock pre-Archer's news.
Yeah.
So I'm always listening at that particular time live here in America if I'm able to. Just tell us what exactly is the news, and why has King Charles taken the decision? I'm assuming it's a decision from on high to do this. So just bring us up to speed in case people haven't heard everything. What
Yeah.
is what is the actual news, and why has the decision been taken at this particular moment? What insight can you offer on that?
So Prince Andrew issued a statement this evening. First reports started coming out about 5:45. We became aware that there was something going on, something big going on. I did a little note on Substack. I had a suspicion that this was what it was. This is Andrew's statement. A statement by Prince Andrew. Now, in the old days, that would have said a statement by the Duke of York. Bizarre as it may seem, Duke of York is a better title than Prince Andrew. So he's back to being mere Prince Andrew. In discussion with the King and my immediate and wider family, we have concluded the continued accusations about me distract from the work of His Majesty and the royal family. I have decided, as I always have, to put my duty to my family and country first. I stand by my decision 5 years ago to stand back from public life. With His Majesty's agreement, we feel I must now go a step further. I will therefore no longer use my title or the honours which have been conferred upon me. As I have said previously, I vigorously deny the accusations against me. So, yeah.
Tom,
Where should I start?
We spoke yesterday about the impact of the imminent publication next week of Virginia Giuffre's memoir, and we spoke about that was trailed by a very sizable and powerful extract in British newspapers, The Guardian, yesterday, which I was talking to our viewers and listeners about and reading that extract, which left the readers of that extract in no doubt. It's a very powerful extract detailing about how she was trafficked and originally had met Prince Andrew himself. Has the impact, as I understand it, that the publication of that in the newspaper led to a lot of discussion in Britain, and I would imagine within the palace yesterday, or in the last 2 days, I should say, by now. Is that the source of this? Was it just the impact and also the coming impact of the memoir itself coming next week? Did that lead to this, or something else?
I think the memoir is definitely a huge factor, but I do think that the snowball was rolling earlier in the week. I think the snowball really started to roll when it came out at the weekend that Andrew had clearly, demonstrably lied in his interview with the BBC when he said that he would have no further contact with Epstein, but then had sent him this pretty disgusting message saying, we've got to rise above it, let's play, which he sent to Epstein the day after the photograph of him was published with Giuffre, the famous photograph of him with his arm around her waist when she was 17 years old. And I think that what that did, it showed that he'd lied about never being in contact with him again. But I think B, it showed very clearly that this whole thing about the photograph being fake was a complete fiction. And that, he clearly did remember meeting this person, because otherwise you'd send a message to the person saying, God, it's such a strange photo. I don't remember ever being in your flat or with my arm around that person. So I think those two things together, and then I think the whole thing was, as you say, completely turbocharged by this extraordinary extract in The Guardian last night by Virginia Giuffre that, was just, the way she describes it is just, it's so sickening, and it's just
absolutely, it's visceral. It's a visceral piece of writing, and it's a stunning piece of writing. And I do recommend,
and
again,
she says,
I recommend that the viewers and listeners watching this podcast read it, because it's a vital bedrock of understanding where she was coming from and what she says. I will say again, you have a great amount of knowledge around it, but I must, as you've read out in the statement from Prince Andrew tonight, I just want to make very clear that he has always vigorously denied all the accusations made against him.
Yeah, absolutely. He has denied them, but I think those accusations, those denials, have rung very hollow when you start paying people off to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, and B, when your central thesis, which is that you've never met the person, begins to unravel on the basis of your own emails. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He denies it. He continues to deny it. Good for him. Whatever.
What led to tonight's statement? What can we say, or what can we extrapolate, as it were, backstage at the palace, either with King Charles or Prince William, who will be the future monarch, and Prince Andrew? What can we extrapolate from what's been going on backstage that led to that statement, I guess?
Well, one of the first things that, of course, Tim, you'll know, what time do these statements usually come out? 6 o'clock. They come out for the 6 o'clock news. The reason that this didn't come out until 7 o'clock, I'm told, is because everybody was furiously arguing about it until the last minute, and that Andrew, has been completely pushed into it and was trying to, until the very last moment, that all these negotiations were going on, and it's very unclear from this statement, like, what he is giving up and what he isn't giving up. So what does he say? He says, I will therefore no longer use my title or the honours. That's a very different thing to renouncing your title or your honours. And we've seen this before. They've had exactly the same problem with Meghan and Harry, who, when they left the royal family, the Queen issued a statement saying they will no longer use the HRH style. And there was a big drama earlier this year when Meghan was revealed had printed up slips at HRH and had done it for the kids as well. And then they said, well, actually, the agreement was only that we wouldn't use it for commercial purposes. Well, it wasn't actually. It was in the statement. They will not use the HRH title. And so I think there will be a huge concern that Andrew will continue, as he does. And somebody's just asked, does he use the HRH title? Well, privately, yes, he does. And he allows people to refer to him as Your Royal Highness. He doesn't correct them. And he does. Now, he's not supposed to use it, but who's gonna stop him using it privately, because it hasn't been taken away with him. The fact of the matter is, he is still an HRH, because and he is still the Duke of York. He's just agreeing not to use it. So it's a very different thing. Now, this is being very spun in the media. All the newspapers that you're going to be reading, all the UK newspapers that you're going to be reading over the next few days, are all going to say the King has had enough and he's clamped down and he's no longer a duke and this kind of stuff. I'm afraid it's simply not true. He is still a duke. It's just the title's in abeyance. He's voluntarily choosing not to use it. I will therefore no longer use my title.
Can I ask, on the subject of him being known as Prince Andrew, I know I can already see from some people speaking over on this side of the Atlantic, okay, the Duke of York, sure, that's a title he's either going to relinquish or not use, as you say. What gives with him still, if there is such shame and such, if they're taking something away from him that would be profound, to most of the world, he is known as Prince Andrew, like not the Duke of York. So what gives here, is just Prince Andrew inviolate? Can that never be taken from him, whatever the level of trouble or whatever the, trouble to the royal door he has brought? Will he, whatever people think, always be Prince Andrew, and that's never ever going to be taken away from him?
So as the child or the grandchild of a monarch, under a thing called letters patent. Now you'll often hear about this letters patent. Effectively, a letters patent is a patent is like a law, and so a letters patent is just like a law that's been issued. So it's like a fiat. It's like an executive order for our American. Basically, that's what it is. So an executive order was made by I'm not going to say the king because I'll get it wrong, but maybe someone can jump in and say on the comments.
Yeah.
I think it was Edward the Seventh. I think. Okay. The grandchildren, the children and grandchildren of the monarch would be known as HRH. George V. Thank you very much. I knew somebody would help me there. The hive mind of YouTube. You see.
Thank you very much, viewers. Thank you. Thank you very much.
But yeah. So the point is that if you can declare somebody an HRH by executive order, you can just as easily go and issue, like Charles could sit down tomorrow and issue letters patent tomorrow saying, well, actually, the only people who are HRH are these people. And that is what I'm told William is going to do when he becomes king. And I am told that you will see the HRHs being removed from Meghan, from Harry, from their children, and the prince and princess titles being removed from their children, being actually removed. So, sorry, but to go back to your question, so you could be an HRH without being a prince, and you can be a prince without being an HRH. But ultimately, if you are, as things stand at the moment, if you're the son or the grandson of a monarch, a reigning monarch, or a previously reigning monarch, you are a prince or princess, which is why Archie and Lily are prince and princess. But they weren't until Charles became king. Okay, because then their grandfather's king.
So Prince Andrew stays Prince Andrew, whatever happens.
Yeah, and it's just like it's like absolutely crazy that they haven't just issued the letters patent. I mean, it really wouldn't be like it's literally an executive order. It could be. I would very much have thought that if anybody had the political will to do it, it could certainly be done by Christmas. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's all about political will, and I think that they keep missing the opportunities. They keep missing the opportunities, and exactly like Denmark, as someone's just said. In Denmark, that's what they did. They just said, "Look, none of you are princes anymore. This is ridiculous. We can't have this massive extended network of people." Sure. But I think what's sort of so interesting about it is that the Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, in that documentary that actually, and Tim is one of the few people on earth to watch the royal family documentary, reinvented and reimagined the whole royal family as this wonderful, nuclear family, the ideal model family.
Again, Tom, we should explain what we're talking about. Royal Family was a documentary made in the late 1960s. It was the first ever one of the first ever fly on the walls documentary, let alone one of the first ever fly on the wall documentaries that the royal family sanctioned about themselves. So the cameras at that time went into the palace and filmed the royal family in real time as a fly on the wall documentary. Now, this documentary became mythologized itself. The royal family, at least initially, absolutely hated it and hated the experience of it and hated the result and hated pretty much because of the idea. It remains an enduring idea, but certainly it was an idea practiced by the Queen that the enduring mystique should never be removed from this institution. And having cameras so pointedly, literally in their faces and revealing the day-to-day life, that iteration of the royal family, and Tom will correct me if I'm wrong, but they really felt that it did remove the magic and mystique from this thing, which they felt was implicit to the brand at that time. And so this documentary was disappeared for a period of time. And then, as Tom said, during the pandemic, at some point it resurfaced on YouTube. I found it by complete accident, watched it, it is so revealing and such an amazing piece of television. And if it's still out there and if it's still in the electronic ether, I recommend our viewers and listeners to watch it if they can find it.
But then Tom, you have to read Tim's review of it, which is brilliant as well, which he wrote for the Daily Beast, and it's a brilliant review.
Thank you so much. I took notes very hurriedly because I was never, even in the process of watching it, I thought, are they going to take it down and find it's been there? And sure enough, it was eventually removed again a few days later, but fortunately by that time I'd seen it. But Tom, with Andrew, the other big question, as well as being called Prince Andrew, what gives, we were talking about it yesterday. What gives with his royal accommodation with Royal Lodge? We reported, you and I worked on stories, as I said yesterday, to bring people up to speed who weren't listening to us or watching us yesterday. For a period of time, Charles wanted him and Fergie out of Royal Lodge. There was this kind of get him out. Then we talked about this kind of softening around it. He seems to be okay with him being there. But now we have this thing tonight, this kind of, Andrew having to give up these titles and stuff. Does he remain safe and ensconced in Royal Lodge, and that is off the table, that he's ever going to be evicted from that grace and favour dwelling?
The briefing coming out of the palace seems to suggest that this is it, that there's going to be no further sanctions against him, which means that he is going to keep Royal Lodge. He is going to keep his shooting weekends at Windsor. He is going to keep his access to Balmoral and Sandringham. And I dare say he is going to keep his delicious frozen food arriving in a liveried van from Windsor Castle being loaded into his freezer. There's just a feeling again with Charles and with Andrew that Charles just can't quite bring himself to, do what needs to be done with the Duke of York, that was done, of course, in the famous Shakespeare play where the king has the Duke of York drowned in a barrel of Malmsey wine, which might be a bit much these days, but it's hard to see. This feels to me very much like it's meant to be shock and awe, but when you actually look at it, is it just another weird half measure? Like, how do we have this? It's so strange. I mean, look at that. A statement by Prince Andrew. I mean, that is just a weird thing, isn't it? I'm so ashamed. I'm giving up on my titles.
I was going to ask
Prince Andrew just call me Prince Andrew from now on. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I was going to ask you, in the pantheon of royal punishments, either meted out to Prince Andrew or to other members of a family when the institution and the family of a monarch at that particular moment feels they have erred, where do you think the scale of punishment and the nature of punishment and the tone of punishment, what scale is Andrew receiving at the moment? Like you say, do you think, although it looks blunt, black and white on paper, do you actually think it's the actual contours of it are softer than the kind of blunt contours of that press statement might suggest? I.e., are they trying to, again, sort of slightly go easy on him, but with some banner headline around the Duke of York title relinquishment thing?
Yeah, exactly. I think the truth is that he fought tooth and nail not to have this happen, which is how you can tell this message statement coming out at 7 p.m. on a Friday evening. It's not a great time to make any not a great time to make any press announcement, because people tend to be at parties enjoying themselves. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's been very much sold to Andrew as, look, it's, it's this is the way to, then there won't be a legitimate public interest in you because you're not the Duke of York. The people of York aren't keen about this. You've already been. It's blah blah blah. So I think it's very much been sold to Andrew as,
Yeah.
look, this, you can still keep your house, and nothing changes in your whole life apart from you stop getting beaten up in the press every day. I think that's very much how it's been sold to him.
Okay.
Andrew will have seen straight through that because Andrew is very obsessed by his
Status.
status.
Yeah.
Yeah, his status is the key. It's such an important thing to him.
Yeah.
And yeah, he obviously has insisted on being able to make this statement himself. It's come from him. It hasn't come from the
Okay.
king.
Okay.
But what is actually, I have been told, is that this is very much William's. This is William's camp. Like, Charles did not
Okay.
want to do this. Look, Charles has made it very clear by his actions, right? He's made it very clear by his actions that he wanted to reconcile with Meghan and Harry, but as much as he wanted to reconcile with Andrew and Sarah, and that
Yeah.
he wanted to be the king of forgiveness. He wanted to be Charles the Merciful. Hence, the invitations to Christmas, the invitations to Easter, the invitations to the funeral, the police escorts to the
Yeah.
funeral, the seat in the front row, the invitations to join him at the, cancer events at Buckingham Palace. So, it's not this idea that Charles is completely fed up with it and has just lost his tether. I mean, it's not accurate. None of this would have happened. None of this attention on Andrew would have happened if Charles had stuck by the settlement made by the Queen, which was Andrew stays out of public life and
Yeah.
stays away and is not seen and does not join them going to church at Sandringham and is not seen in their presence.
Yeah.
And for some insane reason, Charles went back on it, and
Mhm.
William is not having any of it.
So Tom,
And
can we dig into your fresh reporting tonight? I know that amazingly Tom actually had other stuff to do tonight, which I feel personally really bad about because he was just trying to have a nice time. And I know that actually since you had to leave your function because you wanted to, obviously this is a big royal news story, and
no, it had ended. It
you're
had
like
ended.
you're like any reporter and you want to be on the story. But I know that you've made some calls. And you just
Yeah.
mentioned it in passing there, but let's really drill into this. Can you explain to the viewers and listeners, how did William take pole position in this decision-making process? And let's really focus on that. What gives with William and this announcement tonight?
So this goes back to William at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. Andrew sidling up to him in those pictures, those amazing pictures that we all saw. Andrew sidling up to him, William giving him the look of absolute stay away from me, stay the hell away from me.
Yeah.
And Charles sort of chummily carrying on with his brother as if none of these allegations had ever been made about him. I'm told that William was then absolutely infuriated by his father seeing Harry 2 days later. He feels that Charles has been really, really weak and really, really foolish around how he's dealt with Andrew. And he fears that he's making the same mistakes with Harry, which is, I think, why you've seen so much briefing against Harry in the media, saying, the Harry leaked all these details about the meeting and stuff. But to be honest, Harry didn't actually say very much about the meeting at all. And William basically has been saying for years that Andrew should never be allowed in Charles's presence again. He should never be allowed in the monarch's presence. I mean, William won't let his kids or his family or him. He when they go to Balmoral, they were made to stay in another house. Like William refused to be under the same roof as him.
Who? Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew.
So William, Kate, and the kids went up to Balmoral in the summer. Andrew was there, and William insisted that Andrew go and stay at Craigowern Lodge. You know, that he wasn't in the same house, that he didn't have to interact with him, that he didn't have to see him. You know, he despises him. He despises what he's done to the monarchy. He's dragged it through the muck.
We should explain to people that Craigowern Lodge, Tom, is a kind of satellite lodge of Balmoral, where it's sort of, was it the Queen's or was it one of the other members where they tend to go and stay as a sort of a mini internal private retreat at Balmoral?
Yes, a retreat within a retreat.
Right.
It's like in that film about where they all keep falling asleep in the dreams, and they go dream within a dream within a dream.
But it's that kind of place. Sorry, I interrupted you. You were explaining something about how William really just didn't want to spend.
And William. Okay, now like someone's just saying about the Queen started all this because she let Andrew escort her for Philip's funeral. Now that is true. And I think there was an intake of breath when people saw the Queen being led into the church with Andrew. And I do take your point. It is a very good point what that person says. But I do feel that there is a difference attending the memorial service for your own husband's funeral when you haven't actually been able even to go to the funeral because of COVID. I felt there was a difference. I felt it was a one-off. I felt people were surprised, but I felt the palace was quite careful to brief. This is a one-off. You know,
it wasn't.
He is her favourite son,
to the point
but with Andrew, it's regular. It's like Easter. It's this. It's that. It's this funeral. It's that funeral. It's everything. It's like Andrew's there.
Wait a sec. To the point that the person is making, what I think they're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it the same occasion? It wasn't so much. It was all about the visuals of that event, because if my memory serves me right, because I think we wrote about it, although it was during the pandemic, we wrote so much, didn't we? The visuals were very much Andrew literally taking center stage, shepherding her by her arm, or just being around her physically, and seeming to be, I'm in pole position with, with the Queen in this situation. And I think it was the visuals of that occasion that really, really struck people, that he was not only there, but he was, you know what I mean? Shepherder in chief of the Queen at that moment, Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah. But what I'm saying, Tim, is I'm saying there's difference between a one-off thing when you're at your husband's memorial service and you haven't actually been able to do the funeral.
Yeah, totally.
There's a difference between that and just inviting him to come to Easter, inviting him to come to Sandringham, inviting him to come shooting, inviting him to do this. Like, that's mental.
But in terms of the public, I think in terms of, and maybe some people watching and listening, I think the key thing with Andrew, and we talked about it yesterday, when we joked about William wishing there was a section of the Berlin Wall separating him from Andrew at the funeral that they were at. I think Andrew has an uncanny ability at public occasions when photographers are present to literally place himself center stage in those sort of situations. I don't know if it's how deliberate and knowing it is, but the photographs that come out when Andrew is at a kind of royal occasion is like, oh, he's really there. He's not off on the side. He's not sort of disappearing into the background. He's there. And I think that's what strikes people quite a lot sometimes.
And that is a very interesting point, because again, the briefing coming out of Buckingham Palace tonight is still this absurd argument that they can't stop him attending church because it wouldn't be Christian. Now, if I wanted to show up at church where the King was at church, I probably wouldn't be allowed unless I had applied to the press office first and got security. So, it's complete rubbish to say that he can just show up whenever he wants at church when the King just happens to be there.
It's quite interesting, Tom. Is there any backstage, do you think, between Andrew and Charles, Andrew and William, Andrew and royal aides, is part of the negotiation here is, I'm sorry if I'm going to paraphrase it crudely, and you can tell me if it's based in any kind of more stately reality. is there any kind of, okay, I'll give up these titles. I'll take as much of a punishment around titles and whatever that you want to give me on this. But I still visually, and I still want to maintain a presence somehow. I don't want to be exiled. I don't want to be exiled visibly here. I want some element of either self-pride or self-presence within this family unit. And does he have any negotiating power around that, or does he have literally no leg to stand on and no power to do anything? Because if that statement did come out at 7, like you said, normally they would come out at 6, and he's arguing vociferously, I guess what kind of stack of cards does Andrew hold here at all?
I mean, look, the communications between members of the royal family are super weird at the best of times. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't communicate directly. They communicate through private secretaries, and Andrew doesn't have a particularly big staff anymore. He has a few people who work for him.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have like Amanda Thirsk. He doesn't have like a private secretary anymore.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you know, Andrew does need to notify his police detail about what he's doing, and that's part of Ravek, which, as we know, is deeply enmeshed in the whole royal story. So the point is, it's not a surprise to the family when Andrew turns up at the Duchess of Kent's funeral, right? It's not like nobody knew he was coming. And in fact, at that funeral, he was shown to a seat in the front row. So, you know, what they then said was through the media, Charles's office said, well, he's going to have to remain invisible from now on when he comes to these things. And that actually still seems to be the advice today. He's not being banned. He's not being banned from the king's presence, which is what William wants. William's very clear. I don't ever want to be in this man's presence again. I don't ever want to be photographed with this man again. So William's very clear. But
it's very interesting, isn't it? Like, we always felt, I remember when Queen Elizabeth died, you and I spoke about this, and I think you even wrote pieces about it, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but the issue was, back in the day, that Prince Andrew, and as viewers of The Crown will have recognized, maybe be wondering about tonight, when she was alive, Queen Elizabeth was his greatest protector. It was often said that he was her favorite child, that despite all the scandals and despite all the everythings, that he remained the apple of her eye. And so as long as she was alive, he was going to basically be right. And that when Charles became king, things were going to be considerably less all right for him. And what you're saying is, now, with the imminence or not of William, or whenever William does become king, he really heads to social Siberia in terms of kind of royal family relations. Is that right, Tom? Was Prince Andrew, are those dynamics correct in some sense, or have the last couple of years since Queen Elizabeth's death proved that maybe Charles and Andrew have a more complex, warm sort of link than people had assumed?
But I think this is part of what's so baffling about the whole thing. And what's baffling to Charles's friends, certainly, about the whole thing, is that no, the relationship was never warm. They were actually quite jealous of each other. Andrew basically thought that he could do a better job. There looked like a moment, where Charles was not going to be able to take the throne, and Andrew's lack of support for his brother was noted by Charles in that moment. It looked like Andrew was eyeing up the top job himself. So there's never been a warm relationship between them. And the thing is that Charles was the architect of kicking him out of the family in the first place. He was the architect of the slimmed down monarchy. He was the architect of removing the security from Beatrice and Eugenie.
So what explains the kind of softened edges around this then? What explains the... Yeah.
what the palace say, and what the palace say when you confront them about this, and they say there's this I think as they put it yesterday, there's this residual duty of care towards
Right.
his brother.
Right.
He
Flowing from,
cares for his, like, as any human does, he cares for his brother.
okay.
This is the line that comes through. Um,
Sounds like you don't buy
but
it.
I don't buy it at all. I don't buy it at all. I think it was Charles's personal PR that he decided he wanted to be seen as Charles the Merciful, Charles
Okay.
the Convener,
Okay.
Charles the, whatever he
Middle
is.
way.
I think that, yeah, like
Middle
totally.
way.
He wanted to,
Kind of,
he was the man who was going to heal it all
okay.
and bring it all back together. And it's actually been a disaster for Andrew. Like, as I was saying earlier, like, none of this would have happened if Charles had, well, maybe not none of it, but it would have been considerably less bad if
Yeah.
Charles hadn't brought him back into the spotlight again. I don't know what Charles thought he was doing. And that's William's position, right? William's
Yeah.
position is like, why have you brought him back into the spotlight? Like, he's accused of really, really horrific crimes.
Yeah.
Why have you brought him back? Why is this man even in your presence? And William's friends told me very clearly after this photograph was taken, he's never going to be photographed with Andrew again, you know? And William, don't forget, 22, the last year that the Queen was alive, 2022,
Yeah.
William refused to go to the Order of the Garter because Andrew was going. And he said, there is no way I'm going to parade through the streets of Windsor with that man.
Yeah.
And that was when it was first, Andrew was removed from the public procession, but was apparently still allowed to join the lunch afterwards
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
sit next to Prince Edward. But, like, that was one of those classic occasions where Andrew was still on the programme. Andrew was still on the programme for the procession going through the streets of Windsor, and it was just like William just put his foot down. And William's, he's a tough guy. Like, he's by no means, everyone's cup of tea. And I think he's absolutely ruthless. And I think it's a really, really good thing, like, for the monarchy, because
Yeah.
I think this
Yeah.
wishy-washy approach of Charles has been a disaster.
I think something else we really need to return to, we spoke about it at the top, but there's a woman's story at the heart of this. And it's an extremely powerful story. And we should mention her name as much as possible, actually. And I think Virginia Giuffre, I wanted to look towards the future of this story slightly, both the short-term future and the long-term future. And in the short-term future is Virginia Giuffre's memoir and her story in her own words. And I can't say it enough that people should read the extracts that are out there and make their own judgments. I feel, just as regular Joe, that extract being published and how visceral and powerful that extract is speeded things up and led to where we are this evening. Because Tom, I mean, we didn't, unless we didn't discuss it and you didn't mention it, there was no sense that this was happening today, I assume, at least last night or yesterday when we spoke. And I think the impact of that extract may have fed into the speed of what we're seeing. Tom, when the full book is published next week, do you think this will continue to have an impact? I.e., is the snowball done? Does it keep rolling in more and even bigger and more unpredictable ways next week? And then looking further into the future, I suppose, what next for Andrew and Andrew's place within the family? Let's talk short term first. What happens next week with more Giuffre and the memoir coming out, as it were, in full published form?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think the memoir, is the story of Virginia Giuffre is what underpins all of Andrew's disgrace, and the way he allegedly behaved towards her. What happens next week? So, okay, well, I suppose it's interesting, isn't it? Because like nothing's really changed, right? All that's happened is he's not going to call himself the Duke of York in public, but he's, just call me Prince Andrew from now on.
Well,
Seems to be the official line.
Right.
So that doesn't seem to me like a lancing. Well, maybe it's a lancing of the boar, but it's certainly not an amputation of the limb, is it? So I would imagine that we're still talking about this.
I think there will be a degree of public temperature taking that will happen. I would imagine that over the weekend, the palace, as it always does with these sorts of events, we live in a feverish 24-hour news culture, and maybe the palace hope they're either buying themselves some time, or they're going to see how the public responds to the, as you've describing it, sort of a halfway house of punishment that Andrew has received tonight, and see if the public, in some sense, are satisfied with that. And why I'm interested around Giuffre and the memoir coming out in full is, I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, there'll be a degree of watching the public's reaction to this tonight going into the weekend. We will look at the Sunday newspapers. As Tom and I know, in Britain, the Sunday newspapers tend to be the newspapers where sometimes big royal stories break. And obviously, I would imagine Sunday editors and royal correspondents will be looking to be printing fresh stuff on Sunday around.
I predict the Sunday newspapers will be a return to the War of the Waleses, in which both King Charles's camp and Prince William's camp try and claim credit for this tough and harsh decision. I also predict that King Charles's camp will say there's nothing further we can do.
And then we'll be looking at how Giuffre and how the memoir is received, and whether the public feels, in some sense, and commentators feel that this is adequate and fitting in response. I sort of feel that this isn't over in terms of how people read and feel about what Giuffre has written about Prince Andrew, actually. But
I think you're absolutely right. I think that the memoir is I think that the memoir is now going to go absolutely everywhere, because obviously people were interested in it before, but now that she's from the grave actually sort of claimed Andrew's scalp, I think it is going to change the context in which that memoir is read and understood. But I do think fundamentally, I think it's probably as good as the palace could get today in terms of doing something this week and being given in the time they had. I suppose it is something tangible, right? And let's not take that away from them. They have acted, they have done something tangible, and they have removed his title. And he may still be Prince Andrew, but he has been very publicly humiliated tonight. And that is, let's give a bit of credit to the palace, or William, or whoever, Clive Alderton, or whatever private secretary did or didn't do it. Something has been done tonight. And you have to remember that Charles is a terrible man for doing nothing. If he doesn't know what the right thing is to do, he'll just do nothing and wait for it, which, sometimes a very wise thing to do, not to rush into things. Something has been done. It's not enough, in my opinion. It's not enough. And I think they might look back on it again and be, in 3 months' time, will they be like, oh God, we still haven't dealt with it. We still haven't dealt with it. He's still living in Royal Lodge. He's still turning up at family events and sitting in front. He's still Prince Andrew. He's still got a shooting weekend at Windsor. He's still, hanging out with dodgy Chinese spies, like making money and trying to make money. And I just, the only answer, it seems to me, is to go the next step. It's not just, oh, dear boy, would you mind not using your titles? It's your titles are being taken away. You're Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, you know, that's your name.
So
And
well,
that's what I think should have been done.
let's be clear. You mean take away the prince, basically?
I think it's long overdue. I mean, how can you be? How can you like? I remember there's interesting guy named Mark Bukowski, who we both know, Tim, who's a kind of PR expert in the UK. He's really interested in the monarchy. He
Yeah.
explained it to me once, and it's something that's always stayed with me. He said, "You know, Tom, for you, right? You follow the story of the royal family, so you understand. You know, in this example, that." Prince is actually a lesser title than Duke of York, right?
Yeah.
That Duke of York is actually a senior title. There are plenty of princes, but there's only one Duke of York, right? You understand that.
The general public, I mean,
maybe like 1% of the rest of the world understands that. And
no,
especially when you think about it globally, when you think about the global impact.
The rest of the world would think the real punishment, I suppose, would be taking away that word, the P word, as let's call it that, right? Tom, I remember in the past when he's gone through sort of his dramas and all through this elongated saga, which shows still no signs of ending. You've spoken. I remember in the past you filing fascinating reports from his friends, talking about his state of mind at various moments during this thing, whether depression or worse than depression. I'm not, I just want to be clear for people watching and listening, I'm not going into a sympathy for Prince Andrew Jag. I'm asking Tom journalistically, what can we say about Andrew's support network? Is it Fergie and his two daughters and that's it? Does he have a wide circle of friends? And generally, as the years have gone on, what has his state of mind been at moments like this? Just generally,
he's defiant.
Okay.
Defiant is one thing that I would definitely say, and you can see that today in this statement, right? As I've said previously, I vigorously deny the accusations against me, right? That's a very defiant thing to say when literally someone who's killed themselves has just written a memoir accusing you of sexually assaulting them. You know, I vigorously deny the accusations against me. That's very Prince Andrew, very defiant, you know, very, very pompous, as we all know. Does oscillate into depression, definitely. There's this story that actually I must confess, I've never fully had it independently confirmed by anyone I know that he was projecting a flight tracking app on the wall of his room. I mean, I'm sure it happened on an occasion. I don't think his whole life is one gloomy world lit by a flight tracking app. But I think it actually really suits the palace to portray him as terribly depressed, terribly sad, terribly upset, terribly chastised, right? Because then it's like, oh yeah, he's having an awful time, you know, he's being punished for us. Well, I mean, you only have to look at him when he's out riding on his horse with his massive grin on, or when he's turning up at church with his massive grin on, trying to, like, you know, banter with Prince William. I mean, it's just, you know what I mean? It's just, so he's very defiant. But generally, the other thing to say that's really, really important is Andrew has plenty of friends. He has plenty of friends in the British establishment, some of whom have been lobbying me over the past few days, you know, to say, oh, you know, he's innocent until proven guilty, you know, Virginia Giuffre was a sex worker, you know, that kind of stuff. So Andrew has plenty of friends. There's a certain, you know, there's a certain class of, you know, upper class English person who will always defer to, you know, somebody, you know, with a title, member of the royal family, an HRH, a prince, you know, and people have been saying, I've been writing this thing about the shooting, you know, and they've been saying, well, people just need to stop going on the shooting. That's never going to happen. I mean, it's never going to happen. Like, there's too many people who really, you know, there's a lot of people, and some for, you know, entirely, you know, their own reasons, you know, believe him. they believe him when he say that when he says that nothing happened between them, and they say it's very unfair that everybody's paying for his blood, and he's been tried in the court of public opinion, and he's never had a fair trial. And but it seems to me that a good chunk of that argument collapsed this weekend with the new email.
Okay.
And I think if you take the new email in conjunction with Virginia Giuffre's memoir, but yeah, ultimately there's a lot of people who would just see it as a badge of pride, badge of pride to just keep insisting that Andrew's a marvelous chap, and
How about I guess we're getting towards the hour mark, and I don't want people getting fed up and wanting to have their dinner. How important Sarah Ferguson and his two daughters at moments like this, are they very central? We always get sold this image that they are, come hell or high water, a sort of his rock, essentially. Is that true? Is that will he be? Are they very much a unit? Whatever is said, whatever the accusations, whatever else, does that, and that is a rock of women supporting him. Is that true, or is it a bit more complex or marshy, I suppose?
I mean, they're very close to their mum, the two girls, and I know loads of people who know them because they're sort of more my age. So, my age, they're a bit younger than me. Yeah.
They are, but I'm not saying anything, Tom. Sure. Yes, Tom. They're really, they're your age,
mate.
Right. Yes, Tom.
But but I know quite a lot of people who know them. They where they live and that kind of stuff. And they're they're generally like really well thought of. Anybody when people who've, I mean, they're not quite like the thing that I always say about Charles, right, is that you can mock Charles, you can tease Charles, and you can say that he's weak and he's this and he's that and he's the other. But anybody who actually works with Charles, always, you never hear a bad word. All you ever hear is, oh my God, it was so crazy. He knew more about it than me. He was so well briefed on it. So they're not, it's not like that. Like they're not quite like that, but they're generally like, people really like them. They're very nice people, and they have their mates. And I think it's just a horrible situation. I mean, I did say yesterday, neither of them had wished Sarah Ferguson, as we can now call her, neither of them had wished her happy birthday. And it's just a horrible thing, isn't it, not to be able to like wish your own mother a happy birthday in public. And I feel for them. I think they probably did get sucked into it, and I think there are probably plenty of dubious things. Andrew Loney's very insistent that there's loads of dubious stuff about them to come out, and that's part of the reason why the royal family has always been a little bit cool about having them totally in the tent, Okay. But I always sort of more thought that was like the anchor baby thing, that they didn't want
there is that fascinating
route to get back in.
There is that fascinating scene within the film of the panorama interview that Andrew did with Emily Maitlis, of when the BBC team first go to the palace to meet with Andrew face to face to discuss the possibility of doing an interview. One of the daughters is there. Is that right? Like, is there supporting him?
Yeah, and I mean that's exactly. So they, so they were,
because their dad is, he is being accused of sexual abuse of a young woman, and there with him in the room to negotiate the interview where this will be discussed is his own daughter.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what friends of the girls tell me, that ultimately they're like fat blood is thicker than water.
Yeah.
That's their position, and they're like, we're going to stand by our mum and our dad. We're not idiots. We're not gonna like go out and start campaigning for him, or anything like that in public, but we're not going to stop seeing him. We're not going to denounce him.
Yeah.
Which I think kind of redounds somewhat to their credit. But I think it's so that's the other thing that was made clear tonight in the sort of briefing notes that went with all of this was that their position's not impacted at all. So this has no impact on.
When we say they, you mean Eugenie and
Beatrice and Eugenie. Okay. Yeah.
Meaning when you say their positions, let's be clear for everyone watching and listening. What does that briefing note mean exactly about their position?
So they're still princesses, basically. Okay. But as Andrew's still a prince, it's not like it would have any impact. And as Andrew's still actually the Duke of York, which everyone's quietly,
Is there anything else that we haven't discussed tonight that was in the briefing notes beside the boldness of the very short statement that you can convey, or not? We don't want to get you into any trouble, but is there anything else?
Yeah. No, it was just, there was a thing saying that the king was glad about it. Which is a really sort of unusual. He was glad that a resolution had been reached, that this matter had now been solved. That the king was glad, and that it had been taken in consultation with the whole family. Like that was the other thing that they were very much wanted to emphasize, and that. So I think there is an acknowledgement by Charles's side that William has applied a lot of pressure for this. They're not actually trying to deny that anymore. And that, to me, is part of this whole bigger narrative of the fact that, which you won't read about in the UK papers, that Charles is really ill and that he announced he had cancer. It was kind of accidental, actually, the way that he announced it, because he actually said he was having benign prostate surgery. And then when they were doing that, they found the cancer, and then by then too many people knew, so they were kind of bounced into announcing it. And as a result, a lot of power has sort of shifted to William. So I think it's actually a big victory for William. This it's definitely not gone far enough for William, but it's a step in the right direction of what William wants and what William thinks should happen. And I think, most people would agree with, to be really honest. Well, let's be honest, no one's going to disagree with this. So I think it's definitely a really important day for William, probably, and probably a really important, very humbling day for Andrew. But it's actually quite a humbling day for the king as well, because the king is, at the end of the day, the buck stops with him. And he's totally cocked this one up. There's no other way of looking at it. He has totally messed it up. And we're now looking at the collapse of Prince Andrew's, whole position and structure and everything in real time. It's happening this evening.
It's the thing that Charles, if he's saying he's glad that it's been resolved, I'm not an expert like you, but this situation to me seems like a rolling situation. This doesn't feel resolved until various other factors play themselves out, not least the full publication of a memoir next week. But it's interesting.
Full publication of the memoir, the Royal Lodge. There's so many loose ends.
I sense that the palace are clearly, in what you've been told this evening, trying to draw a line and saying that's it, but it doesn't feel like that's it to me. Correct or not?
I think you're absolutely right. I think they desperately want it to draw a line. They desperately want it to be, but it's ridiculous, isn't it? They've spent a year saying there's nothing more we can do. Oh, now suddenly there's something more we can do. Now we're going to have another year if there's nothing more we can do. And then William's going to come to the throne, and then it's going to be, oh, actually there is something. It's
for people interested, keep an eye on the British Sunday newspapers. Tom and I will probably be chatting whatever happens, either on Sunday or Monday or sometime early next week about it. But I guess we now kind of keep an eye on, as you say, Tom, I guess the next revolution of the wheel before the memoir coming out next week is how the different camps within the palace then try and spin what's happened tonight, and we'll see
Yeah.
that manifesting in the media over the weekend, I guess, or not?
Yeah, and I think it's definitely everyone's going to be rushing to claim this. I think what's going to be really interesting is how far William's team go of saying this was us who did it, and we want to do more when William comes to the throne.
Okay.
Because I know that he does want to do more. But is this weekend the moment to say it to people or not, or is it a moment just to let Charles have his day? But they're very competitive, those two, about claiming credit for stuff. So well, not entirely fair to say those two, but their officers are incredibly competitive on their behalf.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very, very interesting to see who tries to say, oh, this was my doing, and basically it'd be interesting to see how much credit William openly tries to claim. But I am told that behind the scenes this is 80-90% William, and that Charles just had to go along with it, basically.
Tom, is there anything that we haven't spoken about this afternoon's slightly volcanic news eruption that
there's so much, Tim. There's so much. We could just keep going forever. But we mustn't. People have got homes to go to.
It's so true. But in all seriousness, is there anything that you feel you haven't said about this revolution of the wheel that you'd like to say, or are we done?
I think let's just wait and watch and see what happens, and I think it's a big moment. It's a big moment. It's the end of Prince Andrew, but what does it mean in the long run? We'll have to wait and see.
You've been keeping an eye on the comments that go over my head so attractively. Is there anything that we is there anything that people have been asking that we haven't addressed or asked tonight?
I think people do feel, what people have always said to me, not just in the comments tonight, but generally what people have said to me is, why was the Queen so enabling of Andrew? Why was the Queen so enabling of Andrew? And I think that's sort of big unanswered question.
Favorite child? Is it just down to favorite child syndrome type of thing?
More like, did she know? Did she really know what was going on, or not? And I think that is the big question that hangs over it all. And of course, the Queen is so sainted, and
absolutely
the memory of Queen Elizabeth. Absolutely. But it does feel like did she enable it? Did she enable it? People definitely think that she did. I'm inclined to think that she did a bit, and she's such a kind of brilliant leader in so many ways. But it seems just on her management of her family, she just failed so badly, didn't she?
But we saw it was in the Olivia Colman chapters, I think, of The Crown, and the way they dramatized it. And again, Tom said it wasn't true, but he genuinely seemed to be the absolute apple of her eye, who could do no wrong, which is a fairly familiar dynamic in lots of families. But sometimes there is a golden child who may not behave goldenly, but for some reason just retains that status with one or both parents. Was that why? I guess the real question is, why was Andrew her favorite? What was it?
Well, I think apparently it was because that by the time she had Andrew, she was already the Queen, and that she was able to spend more time with him, and that she was sort of determined to do things differently to how she'd done things.
He was the third child,
exactly.
Third child, right?
So she was. So lots of people say that Charles and Anne were like one family, and Andrew and Edward were like it was almost like a separate family. It was like a new family. And she was determined not to make the same kind of mistakes. I mean, and she didn't really have any choice with Charles. I mean, because she wasn't expecting to become Queen. King George VI died of lung cancer, but as I've as I've reported before, apparently even his doctors not only wouldn't tell his family how ill he was, they apparently wouldn't even tell him how ill he was, which seems to be taking secrecy of the health of the monarch a little bit far.
My goodness.
But you know, so she didn't really have any choice with Andrew but to go off and go around the world and go to Australia and do these things and come back and shake hands with him. And I mean, it's all very cold. But with Andrew, she said, no, things are going to be different, you know. And
so he really got attention from her. He really got attention from her.
Yeah. And I mean, there's quite a lot of sort of memoirs of sort of nurses and, you know, servants and that kind of thing that really back this up, you know, that he was treated very differently.
So Tom, is there any theorizing that, because as we know, and as Charles has written about, and as again we saw on The Crown, the Queen did not mother or parent Charles in any intimate or close way. She seemed to be a very distant, as it were, literally distant mother. So would anything around the way that she parented Charles and Andrew explain any of the antipathy shed between them going, as adults kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it explains a lot of the rivalry, a lot of the sibling rivalry, a lot of, you know, I mean, there's a whole psychodrama, isn't there, and of Charles sort of finally asserting himself and, you know, kicking him out of the family and the slim down royal family and all that kind of stuff, you know. So I think that it totally is the case that there was very, very difficult, you know, there was endless stories about Charles and Andrew being at loggerheads and being at war and poisonous briefings against each other and all that. But as I say, most notably, when Diana was saying Charles shouldn't be king, Andrew did not leap to his brother's defense. And that, I think slightly signed his own death warrant at that moment.
I do wonder if Charles would have been, you know, growing up as an older brother and looking back as an older brother and saying, hey, gosh, Mum, the Queen, our mother, the Queen, is spending so much more time and seems so much closer with my younger brother. And I never got that level or intimacy of parenting with her. Am I being too psychobabbly? I just wonder if that might have had an effect on Charles, being quite resentful in some sort of sense that he could see this younger brother getting the level of conventional parenting that he never received. I don't know from that.
No, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think one thing we can say about the Windsors is that every single screwed up family pattern or dynamic, you know, they bring out, don't they? And it's part of what we were talking about the other day about why are people so fascinated by them? Why are we so interested in them? And I can see people even now saying, "Oh, my brother's like that. My sister's like that."
See?
Do you know what I mean? And it is.
Remember, we were talking about that earlier in the week. We thought, whether we like it or not, we map. In some way, that family is a kind of tabula rasa or a kind of map for us to map our own sort of experiences onto in a way. Even if they live lives of immense wealth and privilege, there's still that family thing of them representing in some kind of way.
No, totally. And, you know, fascinating. Tim, thank you so much. And we're going to have to end it.
My pleasure.
But it's been absolutely brilliant. And so this is, look, we're so grateful to everybody for coming on, and especially people in the UK.
Thank you so much.
Some of them are saying, I'm in bed.
Sorry.
You've got to sign off now. But what a mad night. 7 p.m. on a Friday night. Never a great time to issue a press release, guys. But hey, there we go. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks to those who watched us live. It's brilliant having you guys live, especially when we need the answers to questions that we can't just find at the tip of our tongue. And thanks everybody for watching the recording as well. And me and Tim will be back probably sooner than we think.
Who knows?
Okay. Good night.
Good night, everyone.